For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin tonight in Brazil. That's where a truth commission aims to end amnesty for those who tortured during the 1964 to 1985 military dictatorship. It also revealed the number of those killed or disappeared during the regime to be at 434. Unlike its South American neighbors, Brazil has not prosecuted military officials for regime-era crimes. That's because of a 1979 amnesty law preventing it from doing so. President Dilma Rousseff was a victim of torture during her country's brutal dictatorship and has called for reconciliation.
They deserve to know the truth. For all those that have lost family, parents, friends, partners, and that continue to suffer. For those that continue to suffer like they die again every day.
Moving now to Peru, that's where the global community still has a chance to limit global warming to safer levels. Time is running out, though, according to UN Secretary Ban Ki-moon. Ban opened the high-level part of the UN talks, bringing much-needed political muscle to the final 4 days of a fraught process. Parties remain far apart, and top UN officials are concerned that a strong agreement will not be reached.
History, my dear friends, will judge us not only for how many tons of greenhouse gases we were able to reduce, but also by whether we were able to protect the most vulnerable, to alleviate poverty, and to create a future with prosperity for all.
And for an update on the events outside the official conference, we turn to our correspondent Raul Mora in Lima.
We're here at the March in Defense of Mother Earth. It is the largest demonstration for environmental issues taking place in the continent of South America, with about 10,000 people coming from around the world. Participants are general people, ordinary, trying to make a statement to force their governments to save our planet from an environmental disaster. Meanwhile, governments are negotiating at the COP20, and the negotiations are taking longer than planned. And there's a general fear that they will not come to a significant agreement. Rael Mora, Telesur, Peru.
And to Colombia, representatives of the FARC and the Colombian government will resume peace talks in Havana, Cuba after a pause due to the detention of Army General Rubén Darío Alzate, who was peacefully liberated by the FARC 2 weeks ago. President Juan Manuel Santos calls for serious talks and to ensure that both parties are content.
I hope that these conversations are held with enthusiasm and seriousness, because until now, they have taken place in order to get a happy ending.
Venezuelan citizens are commemorating the last televised address given by the leader of the Bolivarian Revolution, Hugo Chavez, before he succumbed to cancer in March of 2013. Our correspondent Rachel Boothroyd took to the streets of Caracas to get citizens' views on this special day.
They say that a picture speaks 1,000 words, and the images of Hugo Chavez on these t-shirts do just that. In Venezuela, they have come to be one of the most popular ways of remembering the man who changed the course of the country's history. So popular, in fact, that the t-shirt printing collective known as Guerrillero Hugo Chavez is constantly inundated by requests from local communities for t-shirt printing workshops.
It's amazing to see little babies with their tiny t-shirts stamped with a picture of El Comandante. And it's beautiful because that's the only way we can make sure that lots of people are keeping that historic memory alive.
The collective's workshops are all year round, but the t-shirts being printed here have a special significance. They are in honour of the 8th of December, known as Loyalty Day in Venezuela. The date when leader of the Bolivarian Revolution, Hugo Chavez, gave his last televised address to the Venezuelan people before passing away in March 2013. This year the day was commemorated with communal council meetings, cultural events and messages on social media. We paid a visit to the capital's main Bolivar Square to find out what the day means for citizens there.
Here, Hugo Chavez's presence is just as strong as ever.
Like many others, salsa star Orlando Castillo told us that the significance of Loyalty Day goes beyond simply honouring the man who led the Bolivarian Revolution.
It means that despite the passing of time, we have to preserve not just the memory, but also the oath which we gave to Comandante Hugo Rafael Chavez to take forward his social project.
It's been well over a year since Hugo Chavez passed away, but the messages which he gave in his last address of independence, revolution and a united Latin America are still very much alive in the hearts of the Venezuelan people. Rachel Boothroyd for Telesur in Caracas, Venezuela.
And thanks to Rachel. Moving to Argentina, today marks 31 years since democracy was restored after a brutal dictatorship between 1976 and 83. Since then, there has been immense improvements in human rights, so much so that Argentina is internationally acclaimed in the matter. Leo Poblete Caduti with more from Buenos Aires.
In 31 years of uninterrupted democracy in Argentina, advances in human rights have been absolutely significant, especially since Néstor Kirchner took office in 2003.
They opened the doors to investigation and research. They repealed pardon laws, declaring them unconstitutional. Since then, complete justice has been a possibility.
This Wednesday's announcement of the recovery of the 116th grandchild born in captivity to parents who disappeared during the dictatorship demonstrates that the struggle for remembrance, truth and justice in this country is as present as ever.
It is an immense joy. It helps to understand that everything we do each day has a meaning, that the impossible can be broken, and that change can be achieved. It helps to understand that the dream that the grandmothers had when they began their struggle during the dictatorship is today a reality with 116 resolved cases.
The struggle for more and better human rights is permanently on the agenda in Argentina.
Today we have a policy of inclusion in terms of human rights that is transversal in Argentina and allows us to not only talk about the human rights issues of those dramatic years, but also to build a bridge towards an amplification of rights. Therefore, we are absolutely convinced that although much has yet to be done, and what we have achieved over the past few years must also be acknowledged.
Apart from convicting and imprisoning over 530 murderers and torturers during the civil-military dictatorship, Argentina today considers same-sex marriage, gender equality and mass media communications, just to name a few, as basic human rights. From Buenos Aires, Leonel Poblete Caduti, Telesur.
Thanks to Leonel. Now to world news, where the United Nations and human rights groups have called for the criminal prosecution of U.S. officials after the U.S. Senate report detailing the CIA's torture program. The UN says that the report confirms the international community's suspicion that there was a clear policy orchestrated at a high level within the Bush administration, which allowed the CIA to commit systematic crimes and gross violations of international human rights laws. The UN calls on the government officials who authorized illegal activity to be held accountable. In Palestine, a senior Palestinian official was killed by Israeli forces during a protest march in the West Bank. Zaid Abdul Ain was beaten with the butts of rifles of the Israeli security forces. He was in charge of the issue of Israeli settlements for the Palestinian Authority. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas condemned the killing as barbaric and vowed a response.
What happened today is a crime in all senses of the word. We cannot remain patient or silent on this crime.
To end tonight, Pakistani schoolgirl Maulana Yousafzai received the Nobel Peace Prize as the youngest ever laureate. Malala became a global icon after she was shot and nearly killed by the Taliban in October 2012. The militants shot her for insisting that girls have a right to education. On the eve of the ceremony, she said she would not rest and would one day like to become Prime Minister in her native Pakistan.
The biggest crisis.
Plenty more on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. We'll see you in the morning.